Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing Frankenstein by Junji Ito. This is obviously a adaptation from the famous book by the same name by Mary Shelley. And this is Junji Ito's adaptation on that classic story. This isn't all that story, this is about halfway of this book. So about half this book is Frankenstein and the others are some other stories. So before I get into this video, this is going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this book as well as Junji Ito himself. And this is going to be a somewhat spoiler review. It might have spoilers or slight spoilers sprinkled throughout because the story of Frankenstein is really old and everyone knows what Frankenstein is about, even if you haven't read the book. But this is a really great story. It focuses around Dr. Frankenstein, who is obsessed about science and creating life, and he creates this monster that, well, his version of a human being that turns out to be more horrific and more monster-like, and he decides to turn his back on his creation after he discovers about how monstrous his creation has turned out to be. And this monster goes, well, this so-called monster goes out into the world by himself and tries to live a somewhat normal life. But because of his appearance, he is shunned by society, and he tries to track down his creator and to discover why he has come into existence and why his creator's turned his back on him. And, you know, that's basically the story of Frankenstein. This is a kind of a slightly watered down version of that tale. If you haven't read Frankenstein but you would like to, but you aren't really sure whether the writing style is going to be your thing or not, I would definitely pick up this book and give it a read. It will give you a lot about what's in Mary Shelley's book, and it will give you a taste about what the story is all about. Obviously, because it's a shorter version, there are going to be stuff in it which is going to be cut out, but this will give you an idea whether reading Mary Shelley's book will be your thing or not. Let me just show you some of the artwork in this. This is a very different feel to what Junji Ito's work is all about, because usually his setting is set in Tokyo or somewhere in Japan, but this one, it kind of gives you a European, Edwardian English vibe with the architecture and the way that the characters dress. And unlike Junji Ito's stuff, it's not very horrific because the story doesn't really require it to be over dramatic and overly scary and weird and all that stuff, which I love Junji Ito for. But then you get stuff that's like this, that is really scary and frightening, and you get stuff like this with Frankenstein down there and his creation, which is a lot bigger, and it is gory at times, obviously because it's about him digging up bodies. There are instances throughout not just Frankenstein but the other stories in this book as well that portray people in graves and human remains and graves being dug up and the corpses there on display. So, and obviously the rotting of flesh as well, so be warned about that. But I suppose if you are going into Frankenstein, then you know that the dude digged up a bunch of bodies and just makes a human being out of these parts. But because this is done by Junji Ito, it does go full out with his creation, his monster, which is a lot bigger, and he is more scary as well. Let me just try to find some stuff like this. He actually eats a bear, and his face is all messed up, and it's not over the top, but it is what Junji Ito and how Junji Ito shines in his story and portrayal of this classic tale. Because in his stories, the monsters and his creatures don't really have a sympathetic side. Yes, some of them may look different and not be aware about it, but the majority of the time, these creatures are just there and they are evil and they don't really have such a sympathetic side. But I like how he kind of humanizes this creature that doesn't really understand why humanity is shunning him, why he is so terrifying, and he just wants to be accepted and loved by someone. He knows that he can't be accepted by the whole of humanity because humanity shuns what is ugly and what he doesn't understand. But he just wants to just at least have one person in his life which he can find some sort of compassion and acceptance with. And when he meets up with his creator, once again Frankenstein, he sits down with him and he says, "Look, I am lonely and I want you to create me a mate, a female that's exactly like me, so we can live up in the mountains and away from humanity, and you'll never see me again." But it doesn't really turn out that way for him. I mean, the ending is more or less the same as the ending of the book. And for someone that has actually read the novel, this will probably be a question down below in the comments as well. I have read Dracula, and I prefer Frankenstein, although I do need to probably reread them both again to make that assumption more concrete. But for someone who has read the book, this story is a very, very good and faithful adaptation of this story. When I was going through this, I was thinking about what would Mary Shelley think about this if she read this today? And what would she think about it? Would she like it? Would she not like it? Would she think that Junji Ito absolutely ruined her novel and her whole idea? And I suppose that students who are studying literature are somewhat qualified to answer that question. But me personally, I think that she would be really pleased with this adaptation and the somewhat direction that Junji Ito had for the creature. The other characters in this book are more or less like a copy and paste. They don't really have any like character growth. Apart from Frankenstein himself, he doesn't really have any responsibility for what he's created. He had all this fascination about knowledge, and he actually kind of peeked behind the curtain of creation, and he decided to create a human being himself and to create life and to feel what God, to feel what it could be like to be God and to create life. But when he decided, when that happens, and when it kind of not really turned out the way that he kind of thought it would actually would, he really didn't feel any responsibility or empathy for this creature. He just saw what everyone else saw, and that was a mindless monster that needed to be destroyed, a demon that had to be wiped off of the face of the earth. And he didn't really feel any parental feelings for this creature or for his creation. And I'm like thinking, well, how can you create life and when it doesn't go your way, kind of shun it? And I suppose that's what's going on in the world today with unwanted pregnancies and babies that are born that look a bit different with disabled babies and slight deformities. Um, Humanity is kind of leaning towards perfection, and if it's not beautiful and perfect, it's different. And when you think about it, is different good or bad, or is different just different? I'm rambling on a bit. I really like this story. So the second half of the book revolves around a series of short stories that have all got the same characters in it. It's not, I mean, it's separate from Frankenstein's story, but this is about a young boy who we see burying a friend of his in his backyard somewhere, and somehow the neck has made itself longer, and everyone that he comes into contact with, their neck kind of grows long, and he's the only one that can see this. He's living in this massive mansion as well that is haunted. He can hear noises, and as time goes on, we find out that there is a portal of some shape or form that is connecting his world with a parallel universe of his world, where people can walk in between this portal and go throughout all these worlds. Yeah, you actually get the point with that. There is a story in this where there is this lake near his school, which is supposedly haunted by a girl that drags attractive boys down to their doom. And at the end of the story, well, at the end of this series of short stories that revolve around these characters, we do get some conclusion about why this is happening, why ghosts are in this house, and how these somewhat terrifying things are happening within his house. So that's nice to have a conclusion, especially in the Junji Ito story. And he is in this mansion by himself because his parents are away on like vacation or a work holiday or something. And at the end of the story, there are about 4 stories that are really, really short. One about this like mum and dad that their daughter has turned into a doll because somehow the certain children of the world are turning into these toys, and they have to try to cope with that. There is a woman who is at a medical doctor's about something about fixing her face or some medical procedure, and she's to sit in this chair, which is up here, and it has these kind of pointed things that go into her ears, and something happens to the doctor and she's trapped in this machine, and she has to get out of it herself, which ends a very horrific way. And the last 2 stories revolve around this dog, which I think is supposed to be a portrayal of Junji Ito's life and a dog that he must have had, because the picture of this young man looks exactly how Junji Ito would actually draw himself. But this dog is a vicious so-and-so who beats up his owner and acts like a princess, and she's the master of the house, and he's just a servant or slave or whatever. Then 2 stories weren't really my favourites. In fact, it was probably them 2 stories that brought this book down the full star for me. As when it comes to what I'm going to rate this, I mean, the story of Frankenstein by itself, I'm going to give a 5 stars out of. That's without question. The short stories that are separate from that are mostly good, but as I said, the 2 ones about the dog brought it down for me. So as a whole, I'm going to rate this Frankenstein by Junji Ito a 4 stars out of 5. Is it worth your time reading? Of course it is. It's Junji Ito. He can never ever release a book that is going to be terrible. When it comes to if I would start this, if you haven't read anything by Junji Ito, would I recommend that you start with this one? Probably not. If you are trying to get into Junji Ito and you don't know where to start, there are plenty of other books that you can pick up. But I guess if you want to try to read Frankenstein and you're not sure whether it's going to be your thing or not, as I said, and you want to try to get into mangas and you want to try to get into Junji Ito's work, then I would recommend this one definitely, as this will give you a flavour and a taste about Junji Ito's style and his imagination. Not as gory or insane as some of his other work, but it will also give you a kind of a taste about the story of Frankenstein and whether that will be your thing to read, which I recommend that you at least read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley if you are into reading horror. So guys, that's been my video today. Let me know, have you read Frankenstein by Junji Ito? What did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you think that his adaptation of Mary Shelley's work was a faithful adaptation or not? Let me know what your opinion on that is. And if you haven't read this, let me know if I've maybe encouraged you to at least pick it up and give it a try. I've had this one in my room for a while now. This was one of the first Junji Ito novels that I actually got, and I'm pleased now that I've actually knocked it off the list, and I've got a few of his work in my room that I still need to read, but with his work I usually can read it in a matter of 2 or 3 days. So guys, that's been my video today. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and with all that out of the way, I'll see you on my next one.